I'm in the presence of a heavy hitter right here.
No, this is awesome.
No, but what I love about you is you're super duper humble, man. And I don't say that in I don't say that just to say it, man. Like, you are. Like, I think that's one of the things
Appreciate it. Yeah.
When people say Tony's known to just drop some heat, and then he'll comment on your watch, or he'll love on your watch. Like, there's no limitations for you, I feel, in terms of what you really appreciate as a watch, or what you appreciate that someone else appreciates as a piece.
Yeah, absolutely appreciate that.
And I, and I'm not the only one that thinks that. I think there's a lot of people that think that and know that, which is why you always get commented. Anytime you post something, here he is again, just dropping some fire.
Drop it as watch lovers like we all are, we're all driven by passion.
Absolutely.
And, one man's, dream is another man's, we get so excited, and that's what I love about this chat. I get so excited for all our members.
100%.
Somebody shows, hey, we got this. We're all about love here. Isn't it? This is not a competitive field.
100%,
we're all rooting for each other.
Totally.
Which is amazing.
I want to know, just like a lot of people want to know, first, how long you've been collecting, and how that has evolved from when you started collecting to where you are now. Because your collection is pretty extensive.
That's a good question. It's probably been about, as I was younger, I started with the typical, just always loved timepieces.
Yeah.
Whether it's a Movado. I was, 30 years ago, I thought Movado was the greatest thing ever.
And they were, man. They were.
Yeah. And you got the ones with little diamonds on them. Now you're like the coolest guy in town. And then, then you move on to Omega, which is amazing watches.
Yeah.
IWCs.
Yep.
Then you get into the Rolex.
Yes.
Then you're able, to get your first Patek. You're like,
That's a whole nother level.
The world is a great place. But my journey has evolved from there. And ironically, I went more into the independence because of some bad experiences I had with some of the ADs.
Yeah.
You go and, hey, what can I do to get this Rolex? And, when they tell you, hey, you've only bought $80,000 worth of watches, you can't get that.
only $80,000
yeah,
worth of
this is, and you're like, really? And it just turns you off. Then you go into the independence, and they open you with open arms. It is an amazing experience. Once you deal with independence and the one-on-one aspect that you can have with them, it really is like nothing other.
Yeah, it's funny because my first experience with an AD, I didn't intend to buy a watch. I was going there because I wanted to see a watch. This is when the Tudor Black Bays came out with the redesign, and they were a slimmer case.
Yeah, amazing.
I went into one of the ADs locally, and I just asked him, hey, can I see it? Because on the wrist, I was just curious how it would fit. And the AD was basically, in a nutshell, told me, I have it in the back, but I'm not going to get it because I just don't want to. That's basically it in a nutshell. And I was like, okay. So I walked out, and I went to the same AD, but a different location, and met with the salesperson there, and she treated me like a human being.
Right.
And I never got to see the Black Bay until I actually bought it maybe like 2 or 3 years later. But the conversation that we had kind of steered towards, like, what's the point? Like, what's the watch that you really want?
Right.
And why do you want it? And what would be the significance of you having it, right? And it was a real conversation, right? And
isn't that amazing?
It was unbelievable. And she was my sales rep until she decided that she wanted to leave. And when I had asked her why she left because of the toxic environment of what you just said. Because she always had the round robin, who can get what and when they can get it.
Yeah. And we all understand supply and demand.
100%.
When you got 8,000 people looking for the same watch, I understand that that's a difficult position to put them in.
Definitely.
You got everybody walking in, and also you went through a period when people were flippers, and that didn't help collectors at all.
At all.
The real collectors were they were out of the market.
100%.
Which is why, I said, when you go to independence, you're able to talk to them, and some independents are extremely hot, like FP Jordan. You know, I'm waiting for 2 years to get my first FP Jordan.
I didn't know about FP Jordan until the club, so it was like that was the whole thing about this club too, is that it just kind of like took me from a place of I know a lot about Rolexes, mainly because my love and my passion, and just my study was based on that, because that was the brand that I always aspired to have.
Absolutely.
Get my first one, and you know this, like your first one never feel you after your first one it never feels the same.
Right.
You know, but you always want that next one because you
Right.
really appreciate it if you really collect, right? And that's the thing of like I've never had an independent experience, like an independent watch brand experience, but that's mainly because of the fact that I never knew about them.
Sure.
I never.
Well, right.
I never.
You're discovering that aspect.
Oh
of it now,
yeah,
and
I'm
it's
starting to get to that point where it's like you start seeing the nuances and the differences and how they treat their customers, and you know they don't play games with you based on availability for the sake of it. They don't have availability because they're only making a couple hundred
Correct.
pieces a
Correct.
year.
Correct.
And there are tens of thousands of people that want these pieces across the world.
Right.
You know, so the select and the allocation, how they do certain things, is all it's much different than when you walk into an AD and they're saying, hey, you need to buy your wife this piece of jewelry or that piece of
Right.
jewelry
You
to
need
do
to
that.
go through this
Exactly. And
song and dance, and then we will
100%.
consider you.
Funny thing about my experience with the AD though, and this is what people don't like. I tell people this story all the time. So this watch that I'm wearing right now, this is the first Rolex that I bought from an AD, and this has a lot of significance to me for a couple different reasons. For starters, same person that I talked about in the story earlier, that treated me like a human when I walked into the AD, asked me what watch did I want, and I told her straight up. I said the watch that I want. I remember laughing. I was like, the watch that I want, you guys don't have, and I'm not gonna get it because the wait list is years. And she goes, well, just tell me, what is it? You want the Daytona? I was like, no, I don't. At the time, I didn't like the Daytona, and I told her I want the no date Submariner, specifically the no date because I like the heritage and the pedigree of how it keeps the original
Beautiful
homage.
balance on the dial.
Beautiful. And she goes, oh yeah, we sold one this year, right? It was the middle of the year by that point, so one this year. And she goes, I'll put you on a list. Now, I didn't know anything. I didn't know what that meant, but I knew that I was happy to be on this list.
Yeah, you're like, hey, I'm on the list.
Yeah, now coming from the experience that I had, and now feeling like I'm being treated like a human, I felt amazing. So I went. I remember this distinctively, right? And you got like people have to understand this. I went home. First thing I did was I hand wrote on a letter, a thank you card, mailed it. Second thing I did next day was I wrote an email to her manager, and I said, hey, I just wanted to explain my experience with the other person, with the other place, and then explain my experience with them. And just said I really appreciate it. She's an asset. Then I went on Google the next day, and I wrote a 5-star review, and I was like really, really enamored with like just how she treated me. But this was all genuine.
Well, that's the difference. You're speaking from the heart, because as a watch enthusiast, when someone treats you with respect and says, hey, thank you for coming here, thank you for enjoying our watches, we'll see what we can do. What a difference than someone else telling you, hey,
Totally.
Listen, I'm not even going to pull the watch out. And it makes you a fan of, and that person, commend to her. That's amazing.
It's one of the experiences. It's probably the only experience that I had where I ever felt like my money is worth the value of what I'm putting into it, because it wasn't the tangible value of the watch was there, but it was more of the way that the person had treated me. This is what you would expect when you're dropping thousands of dollars on something that you appreciate, but maybe other people will laugh at because you're spending so much money on it. And ultimately, what ended up happening was, and I won't forget this. 18 days later, I kid you not, 18 days. People think I'm lying. I have the text messages, I have the receipts to back this up. 18 days later, I get a text message, Mr. Caban, your watch is in stock. It was July 3rd. I'll never forget the date because I couldn't pick it up that day. And the reason why I couldn't pick it up that day was because I told Georgina is her name. I told Georgina, can you hold it, please? Because I just want this first experience so that I can take my son. It was July 4th. The next day, it was a holiday.
That is amazing.
So can you just hold it for the day? I'll pay for it now. Don't worry about it. We'll hold it. I was able to take my son with me. And he was 8 years old. He didn't want to come with me. He remembers it, but he vaguely remembers it.
Of course.
And the funny thing about that whole experience is when I went there, they made it such a special event for him.
That is amazing.
Not for me.
That makes it, you're a client for life.
Right. And it was such a special event for him. And I just remember the sad part about it was that I couldn't take pictures and share it. Because you're talking, this is a watch that's expensive. And if you do those things, people have a certain feeling and a certain notion about it.
You're not gloating. You're just enjoying the moment.
Exactly. So I just, the things that I really appreciated about it was the fact that A, I was only on the list for 18 days. B, and more importantly than anything else, is that my son got to experience that with me. It was really my first true AD experience, and he got to experience that with me, and they made it really special for him. And the last part of it, which is really cool, is that, and you know this was the warranty. This is the only warranty card that I have that has my name on it, because immediately after the this release, they changed the warranty cards to not have any names on it.
Names,
so all the watches that I own, this is the only watch that ironically is going to be gifted to my son with my name on it.
That's amazing.
And I wear this watch is destroyed. This watch is destroyed, but it's in expectation that when he gets it, he's going to look at it and say, man, my father wore this, and he wore it like a watch should be worn, and it was not just in vain, it was because he wore it because he appreciated it.
And, I love the fact that, they see that you're genuine. You're not there to, scam them. That's beautiful.
There.
And what I love about your story is what I tell people all the time. Listen, build relationships with the ADs. Sometimes you strike out.
Yep.
But you always build a relationship.
100%.
If you want a Vacheron, walk into Vacheron.
Yep.
Talk to Javier. Talk to one of the salespeople. They're actually good people. A lot of
All
them
of them.
are fantastic people. And you build a relationship.
Yeah.
And, once they know, listen, my first Vacheron, I went and I had a Vacheron, and I went in, and Javier said, hey, I want to meet you. He said, we went to breakfast. He sat down with me. He said, I want to make sure you're a watch guy. Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing.
And I can appreciate that.
100%.
It's like, you know what? This is great. This was, like you said, it was the beginning of COVID. It was difficult.
Yeah, it was
Same
really
thing
hard.
with AP.
Yep.
You build a relationship. I always tell people, like with Bucra, they were just a nightmare.
Isn't that crazy?
A new rep came in and said, man, what do you want? I said, listen, I bought 12 watches. I would like a Hulk. Okay. And this is a true story. In the beginning of COVID, in the first week of COVID, or second week, I got a call from, hey, your Hulk is in.
Isn't that crazy?
The next day, I got a call from Vacheron. Your blue overseas is in. And may I drop dead. The next day, your AP said, hey, your Royal Oak Panda is in. All in the same week. I was like, by the way, that was the greatest week of
100%,
my watch
100%.
journey. It was just, but it's all from persistence, and people know that you're just a watch person.
You're a watch person.
Enjoy it.
Truly,
you're not.
That's.
And I always tell people, man, build a relationship with your AD. No matter, if you want a Patek, go to 1916. Go to one of their authorized dealers.
Yeah.
Introduce yourselves. It's not easy, but as long as you get your name out. If you're into independence, go out and call them. Jason, my brother, you go out and you introduce yourself. Send them an email. You'll be surprised what happens.
Dude,
you'll be surprised how humble
100%.
people are, and they just appreciate our enthusiasm. These little things are. A lot of people look at our watch and say, these guys are they're crazy.
Yeah.
Spending 5, 10, X amount of dollars on watches.
It can go
and,
up there.
It's not an investment, it's a passion.
It is.
And if you reach out to them, you reach out to a creator, they're really they're so excited that you show interest. And, you might not get it tomorrow. You might not get it in a week. You might not get it in a year. But eventually they're going to call you and say, hey, thank you for your passion.
100%.
Would you like, one of our watches?
100%.
And that's my, when you deal in this business and you want to deal with independents, relationships are everything. Treat them
agree,
with the respect that you want to be treated with, and then we can only go forward.
I also think, and I agree with you 100%, and I also think that sometimes we lose passion as watch enthusiasts and as watch collectors.
Great point.
We lose focus of what's the reason why we started collecting, or that passion of why we started collecting. And ultimately what ends up happening is we can tend to look at collecting as a burden simply because of the bad experiences we've had with authorized dealers, or the bad relationships that we've had with other people who
Sure.
work for authorized dealers. And that can be off-putting, and that can just be, put you in a position where you're like, you know what, screw this. And I think sometimes you have to kind of like realign and tell yourself, like, I don't need every piece from this catalog or from this brand or from this house. I know what I love, I know what I like, and this is what I'm chasing. And if I can't have that, you don't lose the passion for it.
Right.
You just understand that, this is a business, it's a for-profit business, but at the end of the day, we are also collectors.
We are.
And collecting comes with its pros and its cons, you know what I mean? Like,
Very true, yeah.
It's one of those things, and that's where, like, you're wearing your A-Lang right now, right?
Right.
And I want to know the backstory behind that one. I saw it. I was able to hold it in my hand. Heavy piece of jewelry.
Yes, a little too heavy, yes.
What's the story behind that piece specifically?
I've been a fan of Longa just because of their craftsmanship.
Yeah,
we
it's a beautiful
talked
piece.
about that. If you look at the back of this thing, it looks
It's
it looks
bonkers.
like a city.
Yeah, it's bonkers, man.
It
really is.
It really is just
It's like
it's an amazing piece of engineering, and that's what drew me to them.
it's a gorgeous
And
piece.
it's a piece that
heavy,
I've
too.
always coveted. And once we're able to make a financial decision and say, is this something, and it's with this particular piece, I go through phases. There was a period when Longa was probably my favorite,
Yeah,
watch brand.
I can see why.
Yeah, with Longa One and the Odysseus and they're just amazing watches. This to me signifies just watchmaking at its best.
Definitely.
The fact that, from what I understand, when this watch came out, Patek had to redesign their chronos. They said, okay, this is a game changer.
Oh yeah.
It's just a beautiful piece. When I wear a watch, and we've talked about this, the monetary value has really very
Yeah.
little to do with it.
Which is what we all appreciate
Right,
about
it's
you.
how it makes you feel.
Yeah, 100%.
We were talking earlier. My daily watch is worth very little, but I just love wearing
Exactly,
it all the time, and
exactly.
it makes me happy.
Yep.
If you're in this hobby to make money, you're not a collector.
100%.
What are you talking about in here?
This guy right here is my hero, by the way.
I love Marty.
Marty is the best.
Marty is the epitome of Rolex.
This guy is the
Rolex knowledge.
and we have it on our chat. He is known as
Goes back to forever.
he's known as the GOAT. Just let's leave it at that.
Datagraph.
Which he has.
Yeah, I'm marking a sub. I was just telling a story about it. This watch is destroyed. If you, yeah,
Isn't it the best?
I have it, but it's.
Hell,
Oh,
absolutely,
yeah, hell yeah.
absolutely.
Hell yeah.
You're up. Good to see you, Marty.
Good to see
hey,
you.
Greg, hey,
Take care.
have a safe trip.
Thank you.
Take care, buddy. We'll see you when you get back.
Where you going?
It was good. I'm going Europe tomorrow.
Oh man, enjoy.
Thanks. Yeah.
Have a safe trip.
Vienna, Prague, and Budapest.
That's gonna be amazing.
Hopefully I'll survive and be back.
You will
safe.
definitely,
Be
definitely.
safe.
Take care. I love
Marty
him.
is he's the GOAT.
Yeah, he was.
He's been collecting longer than me, so he's awesome.
he's the thing with Marty is that when I first joined, because I was so heavily tilted into Rolex, a lot of my discussions and a lot of conversations were tilted towards that because I studied Rolex and horology behind the house for a long time. And although I know a lot about the vintage pieces, I don't own any vintage pieces, mainly because I'm more scared to buy vintage pieces because of
you got to
know,
make sure what
right,
you're
and
not
you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And he was one of those people where he's like, hey, this is, keeping the chat interesting in terms of what the history of certain pieces were and where you can go to find a vintage piece and what to look out for. And I appreciated that because I didn't know what I didn't know until later when you start seeing this different echelon
Right.
of different collectors.
Sure.
Right? You talk about Rolex. Rolex it's respected among people, but, and I don't want anybody to get upset at me by saying this, but it's, in many ways, it's an entry point to the higher horology.
To the higher end horology, yeah.
And it's not to take away from what they do, but it's just to kind of say what the facts are. I mean,
Sure.
When you start talking about independent, you start talking about, the Trinity. You start talking about the brands that are still privately owned and family owned, and the things that are really important and like at the forefront of innovation. Those are like really important. And then you talk about independence, right? And that's where you have a heavy, extensive experience with that, where an independent brand, like, there's two ways that people can look at an independent brand. And, it's a scary investment because you don't know what you're getting into.
Sure.
Or it's a great investment because you're happily in a position to be able to support somebody that's doing something, or a house that's doing something completely different.
Right.
And I think we were talking about this earlier before we were recording, where you had your one of one piece, right? And how that made you feel in the grand scheme of your watch collecting, right?
Yeah, that's
like my Submariner is not one of one, right?
Sure.
It just is a different feeling and a different hit when it's an independent. And because of the group, just understanding what that even meant, right? Or even like what these different brands were, was a whole different echelon. It was a whole different thing.
And we're always learning.
Always.
That's a beautiful thing with this chat. We're always learning.
100%.
When we have a member that's designing a watch.
Yeah.
Chris.
Which
Chris
is
is
wild.
he's designing a watch. We're taking it to different levels.
It's totally crazy, man. How do you make a decision for the independence that you look for?
What I'm looking at now more is a little more, just something a little exclusive.
Mm-hmm.
Not that that's the deciding factor.
Yeah.
Like the piece I just got was one of 25.
Yeah.
And I was offered the last one, number 25.
Yeah.
You have to weigh, as we know, this habit can become a little bit overwhelming.
Oh, yeah.
And there's only so much resources you can,
100%, yeah.
And sometimes you have to take an old watch and say, I love you, but
You gotta go.
You gotta go so I can bring in, the
Something
new
new.
guy. But yeah, lately I try to get more unique pieces.
Yeah.
My one of one is I have more expensive watches. That's my favorite watch.
Yeah.
That to me is nobody will ever. I can go to an event and they make 10 watches a year anyway.
Exactly.
So it's not like they make a lot of them.
Yeah.
So that one to me is amazing. And I just love that I'm supporting an independent that's doing stuff that we love.
Yep.
We went. If you were there, we had an event with Esperlux.
Yeah. Yep.
And I told Chris, I said, man, you're doing, God bless you, because you're supporting independence, which is making our community thrive, and it is
100%.
really amazing. And I tell all young collectors as yourselves, when you go into the independent field, just try it out, something you like. They're not expensive.
Yeah.
Just make sure you like the field, and before you know it, you're got a
you
sickness like me, and you're like, what the hell am I doing? with my
like
life?
all of us.
It's amazing.
I think that's one of the things that's really cool about you specifically is you don't have that you never put a monetary value of what a watch is or a piece is, And it's like this holds significance to me because of,
Sure.
and it's never tied to some sort of monetary value. It's,
Yeah, and I don't think watches should be. When people start, saying like, looking at their watch box and adding it up,
yeah,
then you're not loving watches anymore.
No.
You're loving money.
exactly.
This
exactly.
is not what we're in this for.
No, and that's the thing of it. I think graduating to the point where, like, going from the major brands to the more independent brands. One of the things that I also share with you is, I think a piece. I almost feel like a piece, almost instantaneously, just like jumps at you.
It lets you know.
It lets you
Absolutely.
know. And I know that sounds like cliche and it sounds ridiculous, but there are pieces that will jump out at you and you're just like, man, that is unbelievable. And you're just in a position where you're like, I got to research this a little bit more.
Right. How can I make this happen?
How can I make this happen? What makes this unique? What is it that? How can I make this purchase, or how can I acquire this? And then you realize, oh yeah, that's just sold out. Like, that's one of 3
Right,
pieces.
right,
and then,
exactly.
But
And then you put it on your alert.
100%.
And you're
100%.
always looking for that.
Let me
piece.
sign up to the mailing list. Let me reach out to the people
Yeah.
that are manufacturing. And I think that's the really unique thing about the independent side of it, which is really cool. Is like, case in point, there's been a couple of watches that I've had interest in where I've reached out to the actual watchmaker and have engaged and had conversations with the actual watchmaker,
which is unheard of.
It's unheard of. And I would have never been something that I would have done or even thought to do had it not been being part of the watch club, where it's like, oh yeah, I know this owner, I know that guy, and it's like, you guys know, like, on a first name basis. Yeah,
it's such a small. You think it's a massive. It's such a small community.
It really is.
Everybody knows everybody. Once you're established and if you've made contacts, it's so amazing how you say, you're having a conversation. Yeah, I talked to and they're like, what do you mean?
Yep.
Yeah, he's a regular guy.
That's it.
This guy's a regular guy.
And it's, you see it. Like, we saw the event that we just had with the Esperlux and just the event that we're gonna have with the watch designers. Like, you see that these are just regular people that have a passion, that have been able to take that passion because of either the training or because of their background, and produce something that is either unique, substantial, different, or influential, or all of those,
or
right?
all above. Yeah.
And then you're just mesmerized,
And
like,
it's a passion that we enjoy. And listen, and I appreciate young guys like you, Will.
I appreciate
that. Just you're continuing the torch for us old guys. You're gonna keep it going, and it's just this is what the community is about.
It is. It really is.
Guys like Will are just outstanding human beings, family guys.
Thank you.
That are passionate. That this is just something we all enjoy, and we communicate. We have so much fun, and I encourage anyone who's into just communicate with your friends. Just open up your horizons and listen. We never judge.
No.
Be humble and just be thankful for everything we have every day.
100%.
And friends like Will,
Dude.
to me, is just amazing, brother.
Likewise, brother.
This is awesome.
I appreciate it.
This is awesome, bro.
Nah, I love this.
I love it. So you guys out there, hang out with us anytime you want. We're going to be here every month. We'll do a little podcast, and we'll keep everybody informed of our beautiful timepieces that we enjoy so much.
That's it. I look forward to it, man.
Will, you're the man, brother.
You're the man.